Cool. Just want to show everyone I'm wearing my Envoy proxy socks. Yeah, so I'm very excited to be here. It's so great to see all of you. This is a new talk, but something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And essentially how Envoy has moved from being a proxy to, I think, a platform that people are going to build applications on, and that makes it more of an operating system. So people talk about Envoy a lot. You'll hear the term universal data plane. And let's come back to the original project goals of Envoy. And as I've said in many talks, the goal is that we would like to make the network transparent to applications. We want application developers to focus on business logic anytime that they spend futzing with network or fixing bugs or finding bugs around sporadic failures and things like that is time that they're not spending working on business logic. And of course, we'd like to help them fix problems when those problems do occur. And so we open sourced Envoy at the end of 2016, and it's become incredibly popular. This has resonated with people, and I greatly underestimated the demand in the market for a proxy that could be used in this generic way, and people have built really incredibly fantastic things on top of it. And if you look at adoption, it's really incredible, and it ranges from all of the major cloud providers to now probably tens of startups that are building their businesses on top of Envoy, to companies like Lyft, who are large internet providers who are using Envoy. And the use cases are also very wide. They range from API gateway, edge proxy, to service-to-service proxying, to middle proxying. I'm continuously blown away by the different use cases that pop up, and we'll cover why that is. But it's been fantastic to see all of these projects, both closed source and open source, that have popped up around Envoy as that ecosystem has grown. So let's talk a little bit about, from my perspective, why Envoy has become popular. I think that the first thing is just a check mark, is that Envoy performs quite well. So I think when people are looking in this space, it's something that is going to be running on lots of boxes, and we would like it to be fairly efficient from a memory and CPU perspective. So that's a check mark that Envoy has done. From very early stages of the project, we've focused on reliability. So that means excellent test coverage, making sure that master is in a good state at all times. I think most people have considered the project to be fairly stable, and I think that's super important, and that has allowed us to grow. Obviously, modern code base, especially compared to some of our competitors. I think it's been exciting for people to have a proxy like this that's on GitHub, and we can grow our community, and we do CI and all types of normal modern things. That's been great. And the next thing is really around operations. And I think in our new cloud native world, people are focusing a lot more on, quote, DevOps, and just the idea that people need to run the software that they're also building. So I think given that we built Envoy at Lyft, and it was built by the team that also operated it, we had a sense of operations from the very early days. And so we've really focused on having best-in-class things like stats and logging and tracing and stuff like that. Now let's come to the bold items, and the bold items are really why I think that Envoy has grown so much. And the first thing is extensibility. We have focused very much on making Envoy a very extensible platform. So we allow plugins at tons of different layers. And I think that's an important thing from any product perspective, but particularly from an open source perspective, because we don't want to get overwhelmed with people having to change the core to build whatever functionality they actually want. And this extensibility comes back to all of the products and services that are now built on top of Envoy. It has allowed people to build, really incredible things. I don't have time to go into all of the people that I talk to and all the different use cases, but really amazing to see what people have been able to build on top of this core code. It's quite amazing. The next thing, I think really, if I were to look at a single thing of why Envoy has become so popular, it is the fact that it is API driven. So when you look at some of our competitors like Nginx or HA Proxy, we're really moving from a world in which I would call it the flat configuration file world to an API driven cloud native world. And this has allowed Envoy to be, again, built into very interesting control plane management systems where people can differentiate. And now, we can have a distributed system of envoys that make a larger mesh or a larger system that can do extremely interesting things. And on top of all of this, it's basically all of you, right? It's, to see the community grow has been truly incredible. And I think the reason that the community has grown is because of all of these things together. It's the fact that we do have a modern system around GitHub, and that we allow extensibility, and that we help people, essentially be successful. So that's been fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about business model. I'm not going to stand up here and talk to you about open source business models. That would take many hours, and I'm sure you'd all be bored. But I do think it is very interesting, just because when we talk about, again, why Envoy has become this platform, I think we have to look at Envoy itself, or Envoy the project. And one of the key takeaways of Envoy, the open source project, is that there is no premium version. There is no open core version. And what I think is super incredible about this project is when I look out at all of you, I see competitors here, right? But yet, from my perspective, we all work together. And I think what's really incredible about it is that I see competitors come into Envoy, and we collaborate openly around features in the Envoy core, and then people go off and they compete on their extensions or their management planes. And that's great for everyone, because it allows us to make technology first decisions. We don't have to fight about saying, well, if I take this patch, I'm going to cannibalize my business model, and that again, I won't name names, but that has led to some pretty bad outcomes. But the key here actually is what I was talking about before, which is that this model of having no open core in the core open source product and making technology first decisions has allowed us to have a community ecosystem of what I call differentiated success. So again, that means that all of you, many of who are competitors, can come together, and we can build this amazing thing and see it grow around the industry. But you can all also be successful and compete with each other and hopefully build great things. And that's a pretty awesome thing. So let's look at all of these things up here, and you might be looking at them, and look at the Envoy logo next to Linux and Android and Windows and iOS, and you might be saying, what do all of these things have in common? And the thing that they have in common is that they're all platforms. And what I think is so incredible that has increasingly happened, and in a very short period of time, and we saw this with the App Mesh GA that was announced this week, is that the App Mesh GA launched, I think, with 15 or 20 different partners. And that was partners across things like observability and all types of different mix-ins. And that partnership was possible because of Envoy, because Envoy is effectively a universal API-driven data plane that allows configuration to come in, data to go out, and extensions to be built in. And on top of these things, you can build really incredible products. And what I've talked about a bunch is that just like these other platforms around Windows in the 90s or iOS in the 2000s, there's a virtuous cycle where the more powerful the platform becomes, the more plugins and applications people want to build on top of that platform, and then the cycle just continues and continues and continues. And we're seeing that on Envoy now, because we're getting so much traction. So many people now are building control planes and plugins and applications that I really think that we are on the path to being really almost everywhere, which is really amazing. So just to briefly cover some of the things that I think that we're going to see if we assume that Envoy becomes this universal data plane, what type of applications will we see? And I think that when you look at some of the stuff that we're seeing today, it's just the basics. It's just table stakes. Like we're at the beginning, I think, of the real innovation, which is all of the applications that will come on top. And that's because historically, when people have had to focus on the boring network plumbing, and we were looking before at the old L3, L4 pictures, no one cares about that, right? Like 20 people in the world in the future will care about that. People only care about applications. They only care about L7. The rest is just plumbing that no one cares about. And if we look at this L7 or this application-oriented world, people historically have focused a ton on just doing that plumbing. But if we assume that the plumbing is there, what can we build? We can build really incredible things. Obviously, we can do security, and today we're doing what I would consider to be very basic security apparatus. So things like ACLs and super basic checks. But think about a world in which Envoy is able to tap traffic in a sampling manner, send that traffic to an analysis system, in real time build DDoS rules, send those DDoS rules back to Envoy and do real-time blocking. That's just one example, or real-time auditing, or all of those systems. These are applications that will end up getting built, and because it's universal, if you're running Envoy in AWS or GCP or Azure or on-prem, it won't matter. You can just use it, and that's a pretty incredible thing. Observability, I found this cool thing on Google Images. That's actually, as a total aside, I love making presentations. I just go on Google Images and keep searching for pictures until I find cool ones. So I thought this one was pretty cool for observability. It's like a cool eye thing. But yeah, so we've seen again, just very basic things, or not basic, but really just the beginnings of metric systems and tracing systems and logging systems. But when you think about, again, all of the data that's coming in and out in a consistent way, we can build coherent dashboards and coherent tooling that spans the entire distributed system, which is pretty incredible. Auditing, obviously, from an enterprise perspective, where you tap the networking traffic is where you can do an incredible amount of auditing. And I don't have time to go into this talk, but I have lots of thoughts for future stuff that we can do around APIs. And from an auditing perspective, imagine if you can annotate APIs for fields that contain PII or like similar data, and actually have the mesh deal with that, again, in a coherent way. There's really incredible things that we can do there. Debugging, right? Just the ability to introspect traffic, tap traffic, search for traffic. It's, again, fairly incredible what we can do to help people figure out what's going on in these systems and actually fix them. And then again, obviously, control. We're seeing people just start to build the beginnings of these control planes. Right now, they're relatively simple, but as was said in previous talks, we're increasingly entering a multi-cloud world, or a world where people are spanning on-prem and cloud, and these control planes are going to have to become increasingly sophisticated. They're going to have to deal across federation and trust domains and all of these things. So there's a huge opportunity to actually build sophisticated control planes, but again, if there's a universal API and a universal proxy in place, these control planes, people can build businesses and systems that will span multiple clouds and not be bound to a particular cloud or past implementation. So thank you. So in summary, I think Envoy has been an incredible journey. Really excited to see all of you out here. The community is really incredible. I think we have grown as fast as we've been able to grow, again, based on quality, velocity, operability, extensibility, API-driven, the no open core, paid premium, technology first. And this ecosystem where we can allow all of you to be successful, which I think is pretty cool. So thank you very much.